On today's Locked On Jayhawks recap, to take a direct quote from Lance Leipold in the postgame, a tiring old story.
You are Locked On Jayhawks, your daily podcast on the Kansas Jayhawks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
I'm Derek Johnson. You can find me on Twitter at DJohnsonRadio, and this is Locked On Jayhawks. You can find us anywhere you get your podcast, including on our YouTube page where you can like and subscribe to the show. Thank you to everydayers tuning in to each and every episode, and thank you to you if you're listening for the first time. Thank you to you if this is your first listen every day. Not a fun one once again, and it is the same exact thing. You could honestly listen to, please listen to this one too, but you could listen to one of the past recap shows for the past 5 weeks and just put blinders on to the graphics, or if you're just listening to the audio, just, anytime that I say UNLV or Illinois or whatever, just bleep that out and sub in the new team. And really, for the most part, the game goes about the same, and Kansas loses another close one, and it just absolutely sucks. And this is honestly worse than when Kansas was going. I'm not even joking. This is worse than when Kansas was going, 2-10, they might go 2-10 this year, where they go 2-10 when they were losing every game by 30 or 40. Because it was easy just to move on from it and be like, oh, you know what? I'll just watch this other college football game, or I'll go do yard work, or I'll go, do this or that. It's a little bit harder when they're still keeping you hooked in, and then it just crumbles away. It's the same stuff. I think there was a Lance Leipold quote after the game. He said, quote, "We're close, but that's a tiring old story." And it is just on rinse and repeat over and over again. Why can they not close out a first half? Why can they do it? Every week they're giving up 7 points and not scoring themselves. And every week they have the football at the end of the first half and they can't do anything with it. Then they punt it away. Then they give up a touchdown. Happens every single time at the end of the first half. They've now been outscored in their FBS games 38-0 in the final 2 minutes of the first half. Why can't they play punt return coverage? You gave a punt return touchdown last week, TCU. There's a big punt return for Arizona State in this game. Why can't they play defense in the fourth quarter? This has been a good defense for quarters 1 through 3, and then it becomes the worst defense in the country in the fourth quarter. It would be one thing if it's oh, you're a solid defense in the first 3 quarters, and then you're just a below average defense in the fourth quarter, where it's maybe you're getting tired or this or that. I don't know what the answer is. I don't know why it's this drastic, but it is night and day what is happening there. It's unbelievable. And I know they had a bunch of injuries they had to deal with, and that certainly hurts, but to the level of disaster it was in the fourth quarter of this game is unbelievable. That last drive that Arizona State had, they ran the ball every play until the final play, which was a throw, and they marched down the field in about a minute and 30 seconds, just running the football, going, basically 75 yards until the throw, or 70 yards, whatever it ended up being. Why can't they win a close game? Some of these things go into why they're not winning a close game, but what is going on here? What are they not doing at the point of attack in these key moments? Is it something that's in the player's head at this point? Is it a mental thing? Is it poor play calling in those situations? Is it poor game management? Is it poor lead up to the key moments, right? Maybe you're not setting it up to capitalize on those moments, right? You're putting yourself in bad situations. I don't know what it is. Kansas has now allowed 62 points in the final 2 minutes of the first and second halves combined this season. They've also given up 66 points in the fourth quarter this season. That's compared to 88 points in quarter 1 through 3 combined. Quarters 1 through 3 combined, they've given up 88 points. Fourth quarter, 66. What is happening? What is happening? Why is this happening every week? Why can't they win a football game? It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. Bill Connolly tweeted this out of ESPN SP+. KU is 1-5 with a plus 15 point differential. I know that's all made up in the FCS game that you play against Lindenwood, but TCU was the only loss that was by more than a score. TCU is the one loss that I walk away from, and I'm yeah, TCU was probably the better team that day, right? And even then, you can make an argument that Kansas still could have won that game. Kansas is now +4 in the turnover margin in the last 2 weeks, and they lost both games. It's unbelievable. I tweeted this out as well. I tweeted this out earlier in the season about how the probabilities based on the high points in the wins for KU. So if you go on ESPN, they have a win probability, up and down meter and stuff like that. different points in the game. Not all of these are in the fourth quarter, but if you took the high points of every game that KU has played against FBS competition, of what the highest point of win probability they had was. Against Illinois, it was 80%. UNLV and West Virginia, it was over 90%. TCU and Arizona State, it was in the mid-70s for percentage. The odds of losing all 5 of those games is 1 in 10,000. 1 in 10,000. 0.01%. So does that mean that this is just like a raging indictment on something that they're doing wrong? That they have done something so poorly that they have set themselves up to be that bad of an outlier? Does it mean that they're just spurned? Does it mean that they're just the unluckiest team of all time? I don't know. It's Kansas football, and maybe they are just the unluckiest team of all time. I don't know. Maybe it's a combination of two. They're just very unlucky, and they're not doing a good job making their own luck or turning other things their way. It's just rinse and repeat, man. I guess yippee, like Jalon Daniels played better. Like that's at least a good thing. Like still there were some issues there. There were a couple plays that probably were balls that could have been intercepted. I think about the one in the red zone for sure. You still couldn't really throw much over the middle, which that continues to be an issue. And you had the one missed pass to Quentin Skinner, which yes, that touchdown, well, you getting a touchdown as opposed to having a field goal there would have mattered at the end of the game. You'd be going to overtime right now. So yes, there were still some negatives, but like, your quarterback isn't Patrick Mahomes. I don't know. Josh Allen's playing at MVP level right now. Like everybody's going to miss passes. So like you can't just be perfect each and every game, especially at the college level. So like I thought overall Jalon played a solid game. Was it vintage Jalon Daniels, a game Jalon Daniels? I don't know. Still probably not that, but like I loved his response after how dirty we found out Arizona State was. I mean, just targeting after targeting. That was one of the dirtiest plays we've seen. And he had a great response from that. He had a great first half, had a bit of a lull there in the middle, and then finished kind of strong. Like Jalon Daniels was not a top 5 issue in this game. So probably Jalon's best game of the season, right? So that's, I guess, a positive as you're moving forward here. But like, again, yippee, like what did that solve? Nothing, because then other problems came up for KU and it didn't fix anything from a team perspective. And the problem now, to me, the biggest problem, if you were ranking, I don't know, I forget like head coaches in the Big 12. If you were ranking coordinators, so you were ranking a combination of offensive and defensive coordinators across the Big 12. I'm not going to act like I have a super advanced knowledge of the coordinators at schools like Baylor and Houston and some of these places. But if you were ranking all those, I have a gut feeling that both of KU's coordinators would wind up on the bottom half and would wind up closer to being the bottom than they would the top. And that's a problem, right? I just don't understand. It feels like in these late situations, is it that KU is playing too much, too soft of coverage in late game situations? Like I even think back to like the Oklahoma game last year, right? You won that game. There's an unbelievable moment and one that I'll never forget. Even then, like Oklahoma moved the ball down the field in a very short amount of time to even give themselves an opportunity at a Hail Mary. I feel like they're just constantly playing in the fourth quarter, like back off coverage. And for the most part of the game, it's like back off coverage. And then all of a sudden there's a 3rd and 18 that Arizona State's converting twice. And it's the one time that KU's playing like press coverage on one side of the field. It's like, what are we doing here? I just don't understand it. And honestly, like Jeff Grimes probably called a pretty good game for KU. Were there still some deficiencies? Yeah, probably. I would say so. But overall, like that was probably one of Jeff Grimes' better games, calling games for KU. And again, same thing with Jalon Daniels. So like now there's heat on both coordinators. Great, wonderful. And at some point, like all these one-score losses, it comes back on like the idea of game management or, like I said earlier, not setting yourself up. Like it's one thing to consistently give up 2-minute drives, right? So then what is the approach? Like should the approach change in those 2-minute situations? Absolutely. But shouldn't you try to set yourself up so you're avoiding those situations to begin with, right? I mean, like, I don't know, shouldn't you be doing everything in your power if you're KU, that 3rd and 5 at the end of half where you're running up the middle, knowing how bad your defense has been at the end of halves? Shouldn't you be passing the ball to be aggressive, knowing that, hey, if we have to run this football and punt it away, they're going to go score? Like there's certain game management things over the course of the game. Kansas now lost 6 straight 1-score games. 6 straight. 4 or 5 this year. No, wait. Yeah, 4 this year. And the 2 last year, including the Kansas State game. So like at some point, is that on the head coach? Or again, is it just like bad luck? Like, again, I still think Lance Leipold is a good coach, but this season is definitely an indictment on just how good of a coach he might be. You always see him pop up in those lists about top 10, top 15 coach in the country. What are we really talking about here? Are we talking about top 30 coach in the country? Top 40 coach in the country? Right. So where does KU go from here? I mean, both this season and as a program. I think for me last week was really the realization when they lost to TCU, they're not going to make a bowl game. Because to go 5-2 against the rest of the schedule, and at this point, to go 5-1 along the rest of the schedule, like that ain't going to happen, right? You still have to play Kansas State, Iowa State, like it's just not going to happen. So it's kind of what I said earlier, like just avoid bottoming out. Try to get to 4 wins, try to get to 4 wins to where your bad season, hopefully in the Lance Leipold era, is 4 wins, where, a decade ago, 4 wins would have been the high water mark. Like that's kind of the goal at this point of the season. Have some good legacy games, have some cool moments. I don't know. If you go 2-10 at this point, but you beat K-State, not that I'm expecting that to happen because K-State feels a lot better than you do. At this point in time, like if you polled the fan base, I don't know, I'd venture to guess 75% of the fan base is taking that, So does that just mean that's the one game, that's the Super Bowl for KU at this point in time? I don't know. But where does it go from here? We'll have plenty of time to discuss that. Let's get to our goats of the game. This is Locked On Jayhawks. Our episode of Locked On Jayhawks is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. When you're hiring for small businesses, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs, which has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just a job board. They help you hire professionals you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job, but might be open to the perfect role. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. Hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn. Post a job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That is linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Post a job for free. Terms and conditions apply. On to our goats of the game. KU falling to Arizona State, rinse and repeat. I don't know. Every score is the same. Every game is the same. We're stuck in Groundhog Day. Whatever. Good goats. Quentin Skinner had an awesome game. That was nice to see because they haven't really been able to get Skinner and Arnold super involved consistently. Arnold's been a little bit more so than Skinner was. And Skinner obviously had that big drop on the deep ball last week. But made up for it and more in this game. 6 catches for 130 yards and 2 touchdowns. And again, very easily could have been a 3rd touchdown. Jalon just missed him on that one throw, but Quentin Skinner had an excellent game for KU. Devin Neal gets a good go. 14 carries, 71 yards, and a touchdown. He also had 3 catches for 37 yards. I was excited early in the game because what was something we talked about in the preview? We said Arizona State linebackers are solid players, but they struggle in coverage. They all had grades like in the 50s, low 60s. And it was, how was KU going to take advantage of that, right? They're not a team that's throwing a lot to the tight ends. You didn't know if you were going to be able to take advantage of it there. Would you be able to throw over the middle to a guy like LJ Arnold? That's what I thought the area was going to be, but that didn't really end up being the case. They did hit Luke Grimm over the middle like once. The problem is they haven't just been able to consistently throw over the middle, but one way they were able to maybe exploit that a little bit was just throwing to the running backs early. I was a little surprised they didn't stick with that a little bit more as the game went on. Maybe Arizona State just adjusted the defense to kind of deal with that. And that's entirely possible, but that was nice to see in the early going. So overall, 17 touches, 108 yards for Devin Neal and that touchdown. And there was also the one play where they convert on I think it was like a 3rd and 4, where Devin Neal on like their last drive squeaks through. It was all will, determination, and heart. And that is what I'm going to remember Devin Neal for. I mean, unbelievable running back, unbelievable vision, has great speed, has great cutting ability, fights for all this yardage, always falls forward, does everything you want. He's a local Lawrence kid. He's helped this program go to back-to-back bowls, like all these things. Devin Neal is going to have an unbelievable legacy still for me in his time at Kansas. But it's like those types of plays where his will to win, his want to win, has been unbelievable. Even in games that they have lost, like I think of the K-State game or the Texas Tech game last year that they lost those ones in one score, like moments like that, they're 1-4. Like he could easily opt out and just focus on the NFL draft and to make plays like that, like just an unbelievable player to watch. And that's going to be for me, even though I'm not expecting them to, make a bowl game or do any of these things the rest of the season. Like that's going to be something that I am going to try to just enjoy over the back half of this season. Like just try to enjoy watching Devin Neal. You know what I mean? The offensive line, I think it's a good go here. You were decent in terms of yards per carry, not great, but decent. You only gave up 1 sack in this game. There were a couple like passes that you had long balls where you held like a very clean pocket. You only had 5 tackles for loss allowed, which against a defense like that's blitzing a lot and, bringing a lot of different exotic looks and has a couple athletic defensive ends. Like that's a good number for KU to be at there. You scored 31 on the road when you could have easily had a few more. Increase in yards per play from what your season number is. So I thought the offensive line actually played pretty well for KU in this game overall. Lucky forced turnovers gets a good go here because those were like some turnovers are self-created. It's like, oh, I baited the quarterback into throwing this pass. Or like Peanut Tillman, I punched that football out on the fumble. Like I earned that fumble. Others are a little luckier. That's kind of how the 2 turnovers felt for KU in this one, especially the interception off the drop pass. That easily could have been a touchdown. And the guy who got burnt on the route, Devin Neal, was the one who came up with the interception. So a little bit of good luck on the turnovers. KU had some good luck in this game, and they still lost the game. There was a stat that came out earlier this week, though. Like KU was the unluckiest team so far in college football. It's like, well, they got some good luck this week, but they still lost a close game, I don't think I can give anyone a good goat on the defense. I don't know. Maybe somebody will pop up in like the Pro Football Focus grades, which we'll go over early next week. That'll be like, okay, like this player, there was like a few nice plays where like Dean Miller had that great play on the reverse. And I noticed him flashing another time or two. I thought Tommy Dunn had a play or two where he flashed. JB Brown might've had a play or two where he flashed. But overall, this was just a struggle for the defense because I guess let's just get into bad goats here so we can go over the defense. There was a lack of interior presence. This is something that I hoped would be an advantage and thought would be an advantage for KU coming into this game. You look at the Pro Football Focus grades coming in, Arizona State had a good offensive line overall, but their weak spots were on the interior. And really 2 of their interiors were low 60 grades. They kind of dominated that interior in this game. And they ran for over 300 yards. They dominated on the line of scrimmage. They dominated on the last drive and the key drive of the game. So you didn't have that. At the linebacker level, it's tough with Cornell Wheeler out because I think JB Brown and Cornell Wheeler are both good linebackers. And when you take Cornell Wheeler out and you bring on Tywan Berryhill, who's one of the lowest rated linebackers in the Big 12 so far, looked like he got lost in coverage a couple times. He had a few tackles that maybe he makes the tackle, but he gets blown back. So you're giving up an extra 2, 3, 4 yards. He had the really bad angle coming around the edge untouched on that Levitt keeper in the fourth quarter. I wonder at some point, does KU just rip the Band-Aid and say, hey, let's just play one of the young guys, like a Logan Brantley or something like that, or I don't know, one of these guys who like maybe they're not fully ready, but just baptize them by playing because how much worse could it really be there? And then the pass rush, non-existent. KU had 0 sacks. You might notice that. They only had 3 tackles for loss. That's not good either. Would you like to guess how many quarterback hurries they even had? Correct answer is 0. 0 quarterback hurries. So, yeah, no pass rush, couldn't stop the run, missed tackles. Felt like they kept targeting Mello Dotson over and over, and Mello made the nice play to force that fumble and get the turnover. But then Kobe goes down. That sucked. And then, they're just targeting Mello. They're targeting other guys at the end. It just nothing great on the defensive end, especially at the end of the game for KU. And that's the ultimate bad goat here. The end of halves, first half or second half. So end of halves, end of games. Special teams coverage. It's all ugly right now. 1-score games. It's the same thing. I'm tired. Literally, I'm tired. It's late at night. I got up early. I got to get up early tomorrow. But I'm also tired of this. I'm tired of how this season has gone. I'm tired that every game is the exact same and that that they can't pull through for one. It's exhausting. It's infuriating to have to keep talking about the same thing over and over and over every Saturday night. But here we are doing it again, and thank you for joining us as part of it. What's next for KU? We get to that on the other side. This episode is brought to you by Game Time. It has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. You get the seat views where you can get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy, and the lowest price guarantee or Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. You'll probably be able to get some pretty cheap tickets to the Houston game, which I'll say this. I know things aren't going well, and you might be like, why would I want to go to a team who's 1-5? Remember back to the old days, 5-10 years ago days, when you were going to KU football because you wanted to be outside, have a nice beverage, see cheap tickets to see a game, and maybe grill, tailgate, whatever it is. That's the mindset to go into this Houston game with. Probably be great weather. Enjoy the fall weather. So you can do that and find some good tickets that'll probably, like I said, be cheap in a pro stadium that you can get great seat views on Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game Time. Finishing things up on this episode of Locked On Jayhawks, what is next? Well, it's the bye week. KU cannot hurt you next weekend. Congratulations to everybody involved. This is very going to be weird because at this point, like I've kind of talked about this before, the more you lose with the goals as lofty as they were for KU, the more guys probably start to check out, whether it's conscious or subconscious for some guys, whether it's, not giving all effort on a practice rep and that leads into a game, whatever it is, it's hard to keep that focus. Now imagine having yet another loss like that. Now you have a bye week where things are going to feel a little more sluggish for you because you don't get a chance to get back out on the field so quickly. This is a big moment for the coaching staff to try to keep these kids committed to the cause, so to speak, right? And then you're playing a Houston team after it, who Houston's not the most talented team in the world, but if you watch that game against TCU, they play hard. And that is a consistent theme under Willie Fritz. He gets teams to play hard and good, fundamental, sound football. And so if Kansas is any quit in them, Houston's going to smack them, even in their home. I mean, Houston just beat TCU, who beat up on KU. I don't know. Houston might be favored because of that win. And if Kansas loses this game to Houston, which I mean, it already is trending that way because Houston beat TCU. Right now, Kansas is, if you're doing power rankings, you would have to have Kansas last in the Big 12. Like, I don't know who you would be able to logically argue them in front of right now. So go beat Houston and prove that is not you, because that's coming up after a bye week. And I do guess you have a little bit extra time to prepare for that game, which at this point, it just kind of becomes about winning for pride and winning to recoup some stuff and just send some positive mojo. And like I said, avoid bottoming out. But that'll do it for this episode of Locked On Jayhawks. Thank you for joining us, especially if you joined us late in your Saturday night. I wish we had something more fun to talk about, but once again, thank you for joining us nonetheless. This has been Locked On Jayhawks. See you next time.